Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review The Imperfects, Season 1, Episodes 3 and 4. So, it seems that if the first two episodes was like the big meal, and you're like, man, whoa, man, that meal. It seems like 3 and 4 is the cool down, where it's like, oh man, I can have time to now digest that meal and just, like, think about, like, kittens and puppies and whatever. Anyways, whatever you're thinking about. So, one thing that I also want to get out of the way, thank you anybody who is to go on and watch the first two episodes of this. More than likely, we may not see that kind of, like, viewage via this review, but things could really be surprising. And so, with that said, thank you for watching that. I appreciate it. So, of course, these two episodes, I started to realize, like, the pattern that this show finally has, because, like, the first two episodes were just like, man, this is just, like, a lot of just stuff. It doesn't make any sense, but it's just stuff. Whereas now I'm, like, starting to see, like, okay, like, I can see where they're building to something. I don't know why I had to go on and do this, but they're building. It's like an escalator. And it starts to feel like an Avengers cartoon. If you guys ever watched, like, Avengers Earth Mightiest Heroes, or like Avengers Assemble or something like that, where you go on and you have a character that they put into every episode, and that character can live and die in that one episode, but more than likely you'll probably never see them again until, like, a season finale, or whenever the F that they just needed to just fill or kill time for the show. But once watching now through 4 episodes, I'm like, oh, okay, so that has that kind of pattern where you're just continuing to just hey, let's have this idea, let's do this thing, let's see if that works to fill time, but still, it's a pattern that is starting to emerge, and I now understand this kind of show for what it does. So, and plus also you can probably see that a lot of these characters are not going to have a long shelf life. I honestly, here's the thing that I have, like, an idea that they should have went with on this show. I honestly think that this show should have been like Spinal Tap, where you go on and you consistently have Burke add in, like, a 4th member to this group to consistently have that backfire or go horribly awry, to where in every single episode that 4th member is to always get killed off, or is to always just like, lose their power or nullify their power or whatever, and now they can't go on and help the team. And, like, you can make a comedy thing out of it, you can make a joke out of it, but I think that would be, like, hilarious as F. And plus also, if Bert keeps adding a character into the team that really has, like crap nothing power, then it would just be funny. It's like, hey, here's this person that, like, can really give somebody a really bad paper cut. And it's like, really? Like, this is the 4th member that we're going to have here? A person who can give a really bad paper cut. Oh no, it's really going to take this person down a notch. Hopefully he runs out of paper soon. Man. That'll be his kryptonite, when he runs out of paper. So let's go on and let's talk about what ends up going on in these 2 episodes, because that should be the thing, right, that I do. So, in episode 3, we go on to have Abby, who is to, again, show her attractiveness, her power, and put it to good use. and as well as everybody just kind of like, I want me some of that Abby. So we go on into the third episode, and Abby is to come to find another patient of suck-offs. I mean, F-off? The doctor guy. Sarkoff. Yeah, there we go. Who, of course, we may never see in the show, but, like, it's great to just have him on the show, right? I bet by the time that they find this guy, like, here's what they should do. When they find this guy, he better be dead. They're just like, oh, like this whole entire hunt for this one character led to Bubkiss nothing. Oh, wow. Like, well, I guess we have friendship and teamwork, right? That's the come off of this season is friendship and teamwork, because what else could we have? Uh, so, we also had some guy die in a parking lot, and I didn't really understand what that was all about. And Isabel is just like, hey, I'm gonna just shut your door so you can die in this gas horribly. I was like, what was going on there? But anyways, so, but yeah, so we have Isabel who is to go on and meet with a guy, who is to say that he's Maxwell, but we'll find out that this is all to lead to some horrible ambush. And so we have like a setup kind of thing where I'm like, okay, you're actually setting something up to have some kind of payout. And I was like, okay, all right. And we're kind of separating the whole team for them to like individually be able to use their power sets to their benefit. I'm like, all right, like something's going on here. We have something going on. But not only that, we also have Burke who has something to do if we kind of forget that she even has powers in the show. She is to go on and give the kids some gifts. Not all giving them a car like Oprah, but pretty dang close. Burke is to also call up this Dr. Brian Yakes, who's going to have a huge shelf life on the show. Man, is he gonna be here for a very long time and be helping up Burke, like giving her calls and just be like, yeah, like, I'm dead. But, is to really just help out the show somewhere down the road, with him coming up with some, possible reasoning for the people getting, the abilities they are to have or something like that. He ends up kind of breaking it all down for this show. So we have that kind of being the bulk of what happens in episode 3. Episode 4, we end up giving Juan some backstory. With, of course, him spending time with his brother in episode 4, of course, the guy that I completely forgot whoever he was. The guy who was to have been tied to Juan becoming a comic book artist. And I was like, okay, alright, this is kind of cool. It's kind of like in the episode of Being Human, where the werewolf guy goes back to his family, and then I think there was like a reason for like the guy to not go back with his family, and because I think something horrible happens, and so he's like, okay, like, it was nice seeing you, but I'm never probably gonna see you again. So we also have in episode 4 where we have these agents, kind of like Umbrella Academy, who, if I haven't said that before, who go on and they're kind of looking into the Imperfects, the group that doesn't really have a name. I'll call them Spinal Tap. No. I keep calling them the Group of 3, so I'll keep calling them that. So these agents are going on and tying in all of the side characters to try and find the group of three. And it seems that they finally do go on in this episode and find one of them. And that, of course, leads to a Red Skull moment, which, if you guys don't, of course, know Red Skull, I'll explain that when we get into episode 4 and the spoilers of it all. But yeah, so, like, these episodes are really building to something. I thought it was really cool, and the only thing that I was kind of miffed about is like the Burke thing, like that whole like her like dreaming and waking up and have that weird face of a thing that's like the weird goofy like jack-o'-lantern face thingy, whatever that was called. Really, I was like, man, when are we gonna get some more of that? That was the thing that I liked about the other episodes, and now they're not doing that. What kind of garbage is that? Like, I'm hoping that they take a whole entire episode and focus on that. If they're going to get rid of it, fine. But I honestly think that it shouldn't be a thing that they get rid of. I think it should be a thing that they, like, always have in every single episode because it's cool, just kind of building up to this thing, just like, yeah, I'm going to get him. Yeah, it's like it's going to be heck to pay, you know? So, or either that we finally have Burke, who finally collapses because like she's been consistently dousing herself with medication to keep herself awake, as if like this is a whole like Freddy Krueger angle that we're working with here. That's what I want happen. So we should just do that then. So with that said, I think it's about that time to just go into spoilers about this one. Let me know in the comments below how you feel about the show. If you're going on and saying like, oh no, I thoroughly, thickly enjoy this show, and I don't know what this guy is talking about. I don't even know who he's talking about when he's talking about Quora. I don't know who that is, but whatever's going on here is just what. Or just have your own opinion. It's great. Comments will be on for things. It would be great. Unless you want to just say the letter T, then I don't know if I could really just go on and have that be put into a comment. If you just said the letter T, I would probably be very confused because, like, did I say something about the letter T in my video? And somebody just put it down oddly? Because at some point, my life becomes a blur and I don't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday. No. Anyways, so let's go on into double 5 time territory. Let's go into spoilers. It's about that time. Let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time we can spoil this 2 episodes. These? Why can't I say these? I just can't. It's just impossible. So, we, of course, into the 3rd episode. We have Isabel kill a guy at a parking lot. Didn't understand what that whole thing was about. But she killed somebody in parking lot. She ended up, like, gassing him in this parking lot. I'm like, okay, are they trying to, like, thin out the herd, so to speak? Meaning, like, when a farmer is to go on and say, man, I'm having a lot of cows. Like, he's like, well, old Bessie, we gotta go on and pow. You know? Thinning out the herd because there's too many of them. I'm wondering if that's what they're kind of doing here. So, we have Abby, who is to call suck-offs, F-offs, what was the doctor's name? Sarkoff. Suck him off. Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, that guy with the name and the stuff, you know? Dr. Sarkoff, we have Abby who is calling Dr. Sarkoff's, now I'm saying it unaccidentally, or non-purposely, Dr. Sarkoff's patients, and come to find out, Abby is to get a ring from a guy named Maxwell, who is actually a guy named Nathaniel Lang. And come to find out, Nathaniel's goal is to put an ambush on the group of 3. And so, here is my question. why is it that every single one of these characters go on uh to meet this guy? Why couldn't it have just been Abby? Then they could have just gotten Abby, and Abby wouldn't have had to have gone on and saved all the other people, because Abby could have really just saved herself. And they could have showcased a whole thing about Abby in an episode, but you always have to roll in like the poster kids, right? The poster, like that's why they have to be in every episode, right? So we have Juan that, of course, is to have, I guess, already confessed to Darcy that he is to be a chupacabra, and Darcy is to already be having her and the chupacabra in a portrait together, and Juan is like, okay, that's a little weird. It seems that already, like, Darcy is just like, yeah, chupacabra, great, but, like, now Juan, like, uh, like, if the chupacabra is a really good sequel to a movie, and now you have to go on and you have to kind of watch the original, to then have to get to the sequel, and it's like, that's what kind of Juan kind of turns into. Sadly, is the first movie that isn't as good as the sequel. Sadly enough. So, for some reason, they didn't go on and have Juan mention to Darcy that he's like, hey, like, I have powers, I'm this chupacabra. And I was like, did I miss an episode? Because I was looking and I was like, scratching my head. Where I was kind of doing more of a this, but scratching my head regardless. And just be like, wait a minute, like, did I miss an episode? Like, did he confess to her? But it just seems they just threw that out there already. There might be a number of throwing away things that they might do at some point. I'm not quite sure. So, and they end up kind of continuing to roll in Darcy through these episodes, where it seems that Darcy is to be the one that we have one of these agents come to Darcy's place and try and ask her about Juan, where he's at, and so on and so forth, and like, hey, here's my card. And so it seems out of all the people, when we had this agent who was to go to PJ's place, PJ's like, I'm not telling you nothing. Like, no. Like, and so the agent's like, well, here's my card. For Abby, I don't think they, like, went anywhere to talk to, like, Abby's parents or anything like that. But you'd probably think that that's probably coming, right? So, but anyways, we have Burke that is to go on and give these characters all trinkets. So, Burke, it seems, is to give Abby, and this is kind of like the Wizard of Oz scene by the end of it. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to give the Tin Man a heart, and I'm going to give the lion this thing, and the Scarecrow, like, I'm going to give him some crows, because it's great. I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen Wizard of Oz. Whatever they give him, like awards and all kinds of goofy stuff. Anyways. How do you not remember the Wizard of Oz? I don't know. It's been a while. Anyways, pushing on. So, Abby ends up getting this spray that I guess is odorless. So, I'm like, okay, so, like, you could have really just, like, bought that on eBay. It's not like she really had to create that anywhere. And then Tilda is like, well, hey, what great gift are you going to give me? And Burke just gives Tilda, like, hey, here's some things you can just kind of shove in your ear, and it'll probably dampen the sound a little bit more. But some like just cheap, just like things you can just cram in your ear, and it's like, wow, okay. And so Juan ends up coming in and like, what are you gonna give to me? And Burke ends up giving him some like watch looking thing that is just supposed to, like, you would think that would just be like for the Incredible Hulk, where the Hulk just had this like heart monitor where he's like, oh my god, my heart is racing, I'm probably gonna turn into Hulk. You would think that that would be the same thing for like this watch that Juan gets. So we go on and we have everybody who is to now realize that they're going to go to Portland to meet up with not Maxwell. And so here's the one thing, the guy that actually plays the actual Maxwell, big ups to him for wearing makeup for I don't know how long. To just like they show him for like mere seconds in the show. And that seems like a lot of freaking makeup to be putting on a person. Just for them to be like, oh, hey, yeah, look at his face. Isn't that great? And they do it twice. And I think they end up doing it for like 2 episodes. So that person not only had to go on, unless they like shot it out of like sequence, they had to go on and like have this guy put on makeup, all that makeup just to be like 1 second here, there we go. And that just really just blew my mind of like, that feels like a waste of money for the show. Why? I get it that he was kind of like amphibian guy or something like that. He's like fish man or something. But still, it seemed like a waste. Uh, Netflix must have had some money to blow. I don't know. They were blowing something. So this group goes on and meets with fake Maxwell. And so Nathaniel is going on and hugging who he immediately thinks is Abby. And Abby's like, oh no, you know who we all are. And Nathaniel's like, yes, I know who you are, Abby. I know who everyone is. I know who you are, Juan, because you're the only guy out of the 3 of them. So I figure out who you people are by just making a mistake. So Nathaniel goes on and brings them all in. It's like, hey, look, guys, like, I have some friends as well, and isn't this great? Now we're going to go on and try to separate you all because we really want to have, like, a heart-to-heart conversation. And so we have Nathaniel that goes with Abby, and we have Tilda, who... Or no, wait. We have Melanie that goes on with Juan, and then I think we have Yamara that goes on with Tilda, and so they end up separating all of them, and they're like, and so Melissa's like, well, yeah, like Juan, about that comic book that you did. And so all of a sudden now Juan's like, yeah, I created Sugar Skull PI, and he's a wrestler, and this and that, and all that. And my brother was to be the one that was to usher me in and want me to go on and do comic books, yada, yada, yada. So, one by one, we start injecting all these people with needles. Oh, needles, no! To then knock them all out. Because they really weren't aware of what any of their powers really were. So they all had to go on and just be like, okay, like, let's just prepare for anything. And so they end up taking needles to everybody and just, knocking them all out. So they end up rationalizing that Tilda just has, like, this super hearing because of the headphones. And she's like, yeah, you know? So we go on and we separate them, and now we have this cool moment where all these people are like in chains and they're just hanging around, and they're like, yeah, I'm all chained up now, this sucks. Woe is me, I'm all chained. So we now have all these characters, and so we switch it up, and so Nathaniel is with Tilda, and he of course is taking this folding chair and he's putting it on the ground. And he's like really squeaking it around, so that we Tilda can just like, oh my god, like really guys. And so everybody, when they're by Abby, they're all wearing like gas masks, like haha, like she's not gonna get us. And they're all trying to figure out how they can like secrete the pheromones from Abby. And Abby's like, you know what? If you just make the room hot enough, like you can do that just as easily than doing anything else that you're thinking of. And they're just like, man, yeah, she's right. And so they end up like making Abby really hot if she wasn't already. And so oh my god, yeah, what a joke that was. It was hilarious. So Abby ends up getting a little hot under the collar, again if she wasn't already hot. So uh they sweat her out. So they now have to go on and figure out like, okay, what the heck can Juan do? So we have Quora, who is kind of taking these items, and she's like electrifying Juan and trying to figure out, it's like, okay, like what do you do? What's going on? And Juan's like, well, like I turn into something. I turn into a chupacabra. And they're like, yeah, all right, okay. Sure you do. Right. I believe you. So we, of course, go on and have Abby, who is, I think, with Melanie. And Melanie at one point is to kind of bend down to get something, and Abby knocks her gas mask off, and then Abby puts the pheromones into Melanie and is to control her. So Abby tells Melanie, okay, like, release me. And then Abby's to go on and be like, okay, let's start kissing. And Abby's like, no. Like, you're gonna go on and you're never gonna touch me again. And Melanie's like, well, if I never touch you again, like I might as well just, like, life no longer matters. I might as well just end myself. And Abby's like, maybe you should. And then all of a sudden, Melody just grabs a scalpel. It's like, bleh. And I'm like, oh my god, Abby, you just killed somebody with your power. Wow. Abby's looking pretty good right now, isn't that right? If she wasn't already. So now we go on and we have Abby, who we also had a moment where Abby was to also, I think, have Cora, who fell under Abby's spell, and Cora was to go on and like talk about how like Nathaniel is not who he actually, or that Maxwell isn't who he actually is, that it's actually Nathaniel and this is all an ambush. And so wait a minute. So yeah, Abby must have went with Quora, and Nathaniel must have went with Tilda. I got those confused. So Abby ends up going on to find Tilda because F1, right? So we have Abby who frees Tilda, and like we had the one cool moment where Tilda was trying to use her banshee scream to try to break her chains, but that wasn't working. So we supposedly had Nathaniel that was to put some kind of medication in Tilda's water to drug it so that it weakens her power, because Nathaniel was just having his nose or a part of his body start to bleed, and he's like, well, yeah, like your powers isn't that great because you're medicated now. And because he tossed her this water, he's like, you thirsty? Good, because there's drugs inside that, just so you're aware. You want some of that sweet drugs? You also have to drink some water. So come to find out now, Juan is to transform into the Chupacabra, and he is to immediately just murder, and I mean murder, Quora. And then we go on to have, of course, Abby and Tilda, who are to face off against Nathaniel, who is to just have this pipe. Yeah. I'm gonna be really menacing now because I have this pipe. I don't have powers because this show doesn't, I guess, have a budget to have powers against powered people, right? I'm just gonna have this pipe. Look at me. So, Tilda's to go on and say, like, hey, that drug that you were giving me to nullify my powers, well, it wore off. And so Tilda takes off her gas mask, and she then uses her scream to go ahead and just kill Nathaniel and have, like, some, like, glass fall into Nathaniel's back, and then he falls over and dies. And so it seems what happens to Juan is Juan ends up running off to make it to his brother's house because somehow the Chupacabra figured out where his brother lived. And, like, we have Abby and we have Tilda who are trying to look for Juan but couldn't find him. Oh, we also in this episode had Dr. Burke calling Dr. Blake Yake, or Blake Yake? Brian Yake. So, I had to rhyme there. So, Burke is calling Yake, and it's to mention that she's no longer working with Suckoff anymore, that she just wants to kind of figure out the whole, like, illness that gives people power, and so Burke is going on and just telling Yake, like, well, hey, whatever answers you can come with, just kind of call me back. So we, of course, have Isabel, like, immediately figuring out that Burke is going to call Yake. So Isabel is to have Hannah, who we saw in the previous episode, is to now, like, have been investigating Yake. And so Hannah is to go on and mention, like, everything about the floors and, like, when this guy, like, goes and does anything and so on and so forth. Has his schedule down, and we have Isabel who's telling, like, Hannah, it's like, well, hey, like, you should just give up that whole coffee job and just become a PI. And Hannah's like, whatever. So, like, Isabel is just really buttering Hannah up for some reason. But so, Isabel is to also mention about the past and how, like, she really hated what had gone on and been done with her. But I think for Hannah, that gives her all the more reason for her to be very motivated to do all of this stuff now. And because she's, like, she's a reason, she's going at this, and she's like, yeah, I'm gonna get even. So we have Isabel making it to Yake's office, as Yake is to figure out that the reason why these people were to have gotten the power of which that they had gone on and done was simply because of a protein imbalance, or something along those lines. And as he is to go on and say protein imbalance, we have Isabel who's arriving and is like, hey, like, what was that about a protein imbalance? Huh? What was that? And so we have Yakes who hangs up the phone because it was like a voicemail. So, and Burke replays it and is like, who's that in the background? So, come to find out, we have Isabel who's kind of wiping this board. And Yakes is like, hey, don't do that. And we have Isabel who's like, well, hey, I'm going to drop all these things in front of you. And you're going to burst into flame. And Yake is like, no, don't drop those things because I know exactly what they are. And so Isabel at some point just starts dropping them. And then Yakes bursts into flame and he's like, oh, I'm on fire. There's nothing I can do but die. What was the point of even having me on this show? Because I'm just going to die now. That's really all what he should have said. So that way he could have had more lines in the show before he dies horrifically. So, come to find out now, like, well, there was really just no point of that character besides, like, oh, we might have figured out a key to the whole superpowered thing. Anyways, but so for the bulk of it, that's what happens for episode 3. Let's go on into episode. So, we, of course, have within episode 4. I want to get to the Juan and the Alejandro thing that goes on into this episode. So, Juan is to be a chupacabra, and so he's making his way to his brother's house as a chupacabra, and then all of a sudden he changes back into Juan, and it's realized, hey, I'm in front of my brother's place. This seems kind of weird. So it seems that Alejandro's daughter is to notice this monster, and she's to run to her father and say, like, hey, yeah, I found a monster. And Alejandro is to play like the classic dad thing of like, oh, well, yeah, like, I didn't know this house had monsters in it. Oh no, like, we should go and check this out. So Alejandro instead is to go on and find out that his brother is to be half naked in the garage. And Alejandro's like, hey, what are you doing here? And it's like, hey, yeah, I guess I'm here, I'm visiting. Hey, how's it going? And so Alejandro ends up going out of like, okay, like, you can come in here and borrow one of my shirts. So come to find out, Alejandro ends up getting a call that his wife is to have swallowed too much smoke at her job, which I guess is it sounds like a firefighter. And so it seems that she's going in the hospital, and Alejandro is worried that this might be like what happened to their parents, and that his wife might die. And we have Juan who's like, hey man, like, I'll take care of your kid. You go on and just go and see your wife. Like, I'll actually play the babysitter for a day and we'll see what happens. So Alejandro's like, okay, great. Like, I'll just leave. So we have Juan that goes and is to figure out what to do with Alejandro's daughter. So at some point they end up playing this like Monster Hunter game where they're having this like armor made out of cardboard. We have Alejandro's daughter that is to consistently make these drawings looking like the Chupacabra. So they go on and they play this like monster hunting game where they're wearing all this armor and have these swords. So at one point it comes down to like this really nice moment between Juan and his niece. And so Juan has realized, like, you know what, it was such a mistake that I haven't like seen more of you guys, and so on and so forth. We also realized that Alejandro had bought like every comic book that his brother had, even bought like a sketch of like the #1 Sugar Skull PI, like the cover, but like the cover by itself, and the guy framed it. I was like, wow, that's so cool. To just be like, heck yeah, like, this is to be like the #1 comic book, and this is the cover, and like, I have all of these things, and so on and so forth. So we have Alejandro who is away, and so Juan is like, wow, like, you know what, I regret like all the time that I didn't spend with you guys. And so we have Juan who has Agent Jim Sponson, who of course is show up at Juan's place because we had Juan's girlfriend Darcy, who is to uh, out Juan for being at his brother's place, because Darcy used to go on and call Tilda by using Juan's phone, because Tilda answers and is like, well, hey, yeah, like, I'm Juan's friend, like, and so Darcy used to come to find out, like, well, wait a minute, like, I thought Juan was to say that he was going on with guys in this wellness program, and he lied to me. And so Tilda's like, well, hey, yeah, like we're not gonna go on, and like neither one of us are really interested in one another. Like Juan has to be much older than me, and he's not. So yeah, like that's never gonna happen. So Darcy is just like, okay, but he still lied. So like Darcy calls in and is like, okay, this guy's in Portland and he's in his brother's place because that's what Tilda told me. So they go on, and so Agent Jim makes his way to Juan's brother's place and is to grab Juan, and like Juan is immediately figuring out, it's like, hey, you're not a real like FBI agent, or you're not a like special agent, are you? And Agent Jim's like, no, but the gun is real. It's real enough, so like I can intimidate you with that and pistol whip you. So Juan is to be like, okay, I need to turn into the chupacabra because it's time now. And all of a sudden we have Juan's niece that just opened the door, be like, hey, what's going on? And Agent Jim is like, that's all I need, a witness, because I'm gonna have to kill this guy, and that's all I need is this girl who's watching over. And so Juan's like, okay, like now I figured out like the trigger of why I changed in this, because if somebody's life is at risk, or if my own life is at risk, then I need to Hulk out, basically. So Juan goes on to become the Chupacabra, bite off this guy's nose, and that is the Red Skull moment, because Red Skull doesn't have a nose. When you end up seeing him like in his red like face, no nose, kind of like Voldemort. Anyways, so we go on to have Agent Smith, who is now like bleeding from his nose. He runs into his car and he's like, oh my god, I gotta drive out of here. I gotta make it to this hospital where I'm meeting up with this other agent, where we're gonna talk about what we're gonna do next. We're gonna regroup and realize that like this agent angle didn't work for any of these people. None of them bought it, and none of them was gonna say a word. So like we have to come up with some other strategy. We have to go in and do something else. And we also have to have Agent Jim, who gets his nose back at some point, unless he's going to be Mummy for the rest of the show, which will be cool. So I'm trying to think. We have to cover the Owen stuff. So Abby and Tilda are to be taking a crap ton of time. My apologies. The other agent is Detective Sonia Benning, and I never said that whatsoever. But that's her name. Like, I didn't purposely leave her out. It was just like, I know Agent Jim. I see him at the end credit part of this. Heaven forbid I scroll around to find other people, right? So, we have Tilda, we have Abby, who are with Burke. And they find out that there is to be this kid who has this invulnerability. He has to go on and take this, like, I think it's like a cleaver or something, and he ends up, like, putting this knife on his hand, and he quickly, like, tries to chop it, until it's like, oh my god, like, that is awesome. and it leaves a mark on his hand. And they're like, well, like, that doesn't really mean you're invulnerable. Like, you can still at some point get hurt, but, so come to find out, what they realize is that Owen is to have this unusual copper illness. And so technically he's not really like a superhero like all these other people. Like, he just has this copper illness. And so it seems that more and more Owen is to like start to have like copper like bleeding through his like body. You can start to see like copper like appear through his skin, and his eyes at some point turn red. So, and they have like him like walking through a number of different systems. Like, well, hey, do you have like nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea? Do you have any of those? I'm just ripping off the Pepto Bismol commercial. So, and we have Owen that's like, no, like, I don't have any of those. So, but they're immediately thinking, it's like, well, like, I'm thinking that there's something wrong with his like with copper in his system. So when Burke and Abby are trying to figure out the cure for Owen, we turn around and we have Tilda and we have Owen. And Owen is to consistently say that he's like a Superman. He keeps like popping out uh, this OS on his chest. He's like, yeah, I'm a Superman. I'm a Superman. Yeah, I'm a superhero. And it's like, dude, you just saved a cat from a tree. Like, and Tilda starts to kind of devalue a lot of the saves that Owen was to make. It's like, you probably could have easily done all these things anyways, but like, now you just really took the risk to do any of them because now you're invulnerable. And so these were like common things that anybody, like, save a cat from a tree, find a baby somewhere. Hey, I found a baby. Like, and so on and so forth. And some, like some, used car, uh, salesman lot or whatever. Anyways, so we have Owen talking about all these good deeds that he did, and that makes him this superhero. Until it's like, nah, really. So Owen ends up getting upset. He ends up like bashing this this thing, this piece of wood, and then he's like, oh, like, I hurt this thing. So Owen then looks on and sees somebody in the distance, and he's like, who dat? Who dat? So, come to find out that this is Hannah. And so Owen is to bring in Hannah, and it's to say, like, hey, like, she was stalking us. She was watching us. And Hannah's to admit, like, well, yeah, like, these people were to come for me, so, like, I came here, and, like, I want to be with you guys now, but really she's going to be, like, a double agent, and she's going to work against them, and just, and, you know, it's going to end up like that. So, we have Owen who gets more and more upset to where Burke is like, okay, we have to come up with Owen's kryptonite. We have to release it now. So, come to find out, Owen's kryptonite is none other than a product that you would get heavily in a pool, which is just chlorine. So, when Owen is to make it down to this group after he's been upset enough, he then finds himself doused with chlorine, and he's like, oh my god, chlorine is my kryptonite. Oh my god. So, come to find out, they're like, yeah, like, you should probably go on and continue to douse yourself with this chlorine, because it'll help you with this copper problem that you have. And so we then have Owen, who at some point is to just kind of F off. And so really for a bulk of this episode, that's what kind of happens for most of this. We also have Tilda's boyfriend who ends up calling her, and he ends up telling her that it's like, well, hey, like, nobody's getting replaced in the band, like, we're still gonna have you. And also, Tilda was to take her boyfriend's her van, or let's rephrase that. Tilda was to take the van that it was actually hers, but like her boyfriend was like, "Well, hey, you took the van," and she's like, "Well, like it's not like you can arrest me or have me like be called for theft because it's technically my van." So Tilda's boyfriend calls her and tells her that it's like, hey, I'm not gonna replace you, like I love you, and so on and so forth. And Tilda's like, oh, okay, all right, like you better, because I'm sexy and everything. And so the boy's just like, yeah, all right. So yeah, so by the end of this episode, like they're trying to put the pieces together, what they're gonna do for the next episode, and so on and so forth. Um, Kind of wrap this bad boy up to figure out what's next. But other than that, I think for the bulk of it, I've kind of gone on to say what ends up happening through these two episodes. Let me know in the comments below if there's something that I forgot about, because I'm sure that there probably is. There's a lot to dip in and dive into. I know I didn't probably say most of this stuff in the pattern of which to break it down, but I could just. Things were said! Good enough! So, thank you for listening to this. Thank you for watching this. But I think I'm going to watch my way out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody. The only thing that I realized that I forgot about was this scene when Alejandro comes back to his place, and we have the moment where Alexander is to ask like Juan, and is to ask his daughter. It's like, well, hey, how did things go? And like, oh yeah, everything was like chill. Both of them end up saying that, and we then turn around and we have Alejandro's daughter who goes on and has this drawing of the chupacabra biting off that guy's face, and Alejandro's like, you know what, you should probably like back off from telling my daughter like so many stories. You're gonna give her nightmares. And Juan's like, yeah, I shouldn't. So as kind of we had this girl who was like excited for this moment at the chupacabra and everything like that. So uh so we had this very nice moment between Juan and his brother, to where it's like, hey man, you can come back anytime. It's like, yeah, and he's like, yeah. So like we had like that kind of like really nice moment, and so like I wanted to cover that because I know I probably forgot about it. So that's great, because that's gonna be another fusing of clips that I have to go on to do, but it's all worth it to try to get things for the most point correct. So that's it. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.